Are we being programmed to fail? The hidden logic of modern work culture. Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Now, look around. At your overflowing inbox. At the endless notifications. The gnawing feeling that no matter how much you do, it's never quite enough. What if I told you that feeling, that exhaustion, that constant hum of anxiety, the gnawing sense that you're always behind, always failing, isn't your fault? What if the very system you're operating within was designed to keep you exactly that way? From alarm clocks that train us to rise and grind, to corporate slogans that make overwork sound inspirational, to apps that keep us plugged in even after we log out, the truth is, modern work culture isn't neutral. It's designed. And if you zoom out far enough, you'll see something unsettling. This system wasn't built for your fulfillment. It was built for your compliance. To keep you running on that treadmill, never quite reaching the finish line. Today on Uncommon Sense, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden, almost invisible, logic of modern work culture. We're going to dissect the unspoken rules, the subtle programming, that dictates our professional lives. And we'll explore why simply understanding this system, truly seeing it for what it is, might be the most profoundly rebellious, and ultimately liberating, thing you'll ever do. Because if you want to break free from a game, first, you have to understand its rules. Stick around, because by the end, you might just question everything you thought you knew about grinding your way to the top. Let's rewind. The 40-hour workweek was revolutionary. It wasn't a benevolent gift, it was hard-won through strikes, protests, and collective action. In the 19th century, industrial workers often toiled 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week in unsafe factories. It was brutal. Then came the labor movements. In 1926, Henry Ford, the auto magnate, popularized the 5-day, 40-hour week after his own experiments showed that overworking employees led to diminishing returns. Productivity actually dropped with excessive hours. By 1940, the U.S. Fair Labor Standards Act cemented it into law, aiming to protect workers from brutal exploitation, to guarantee them dignity, rest, and time for life outside the factory. The promise was simple: work hard, work fairly, then go home and live. But fast forward to today, and that promise feels like a distant echo. We're not just working 40 hours, we're always on. The lines between work and life aren't just blurred, they've been erased. We check emails from our beds, take calls on vacation, and feel a constant pressure to respond, to be available, to perform. We're working longer hours than ever, yet paradoxically, many of us feel less productive, less satisfied, and profoundly more exhausted. The data is chilling, and it tells a story our feelings already know. The International Labour Organization estimates that in 2016 alone, long working hours led to a staggering 745,000 deaths from ischemic heart disease and stroke. That's a 29% increase since 2000. Think about that. Work isn't just making us tired, it's quite literally killing us. Burnout isn't just a buzzword, it's officially classified by the World Health Organization as an occupational phenomenon characterized by exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy. Recent studies paint a grim picture. Forbes recently reported that 66% of U.S. employees are burned out. Another report shows 79% of full-time workers say they're burned out. And Fortune reported that up to 82% of employees are at risk of burnout. These employee burnout statistics show just how widespread the problem has become. Stress-related illnesses are skyrocketing. Our mental health is taking a beating. And yet, despite all this evidence, we cling to the idea that the solution is always more. More hustle, more grind, more sacrifice. We internalize this belief that if we just push harder, work smarter, optimize our mornings, and drink more coffee, we'll eventually succeed. But here's the uncomfortable, uncommon sense truth: this isn't a personal failure. It's not your lack of discipline, your insufficient grit, or your inability to manage your time better. It's a feature of the system, not a bug in your personal operating code. It is a feature of a system intended to keep us exhausted, dependent, and chasing an ever-moving goalpost. And until we recognize that, we'll remain trapped. So, if it's a system feature, who exactly benefits when you're constantly working, constantly feeling inadequate, constantly chasing an ever-moving finish line? This is where the uncommon sense perspective really comes into play. We need to look beyond the surface, at the hidden mechanisms of control, narrative, and psychological conditioning that underpin modern work. Let's start with control. The renowned philosopher Michel Foucault, in his work Discipline and Punish, brilliantly described how modern societies shifted from overt, physical punishment to a more insidious form of control, self-discipline. The perfect example is the Panopticon prison, a tower in the center where a guard could be watching any prisoner at any time. The result? Prisoners start policing themselves because they never know if they're being watched. Sound familiar? In the past, you needed a foreman with a stick. Today, you don't need a boss hovering over your shoulder, threatening you. We've internalized the watchtower. We've become our own most relentless overseers. Think about it. Who forces you to answer emails at midnight? Who makes you check Slack on weekends? Often, it's not an explicit directive, but an implicit expectation. It's the fear of falling behind, the anxiety of being perceived as less committed, the feeling of guilt for taking a true vacation day, unplugged. This is the brilliance of the system. It's outsourced the policing to you. You are now both the worker and the warden, ensuring maximum output with minimal external oversight. This constant internal pressure keeps you productive, pliable, and always on the hook. Next, let's talk about the powerful, yet often damaging, illusion of meritocracy. The idea is simple: work hard, and you will succeed. Anyone can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. It's a comforting story, isn't it? It suggests that the game is fair, that success is purely a result of individual effort, and that your position in life is earned. It absolves the system of any responsibility and places all the blame or praise squarely on the individual. But this narrative conveniently ignores the monumental systemic barriers that many face. For example, it ignores the astronomical student debt that cripples futures before they even begin, unequal access to quality education, the profound impact of generational wealth, or lack thereof, and plain old discrimination based on race, gender, or background. When you constantly tell people that their lack of success is their fault, it diverts attention from the structural inequalities that benefit a select few. It keeps us striving within a flawed system, rather than questioning the system itself. And finally, perhaps the most insidious trap of all, we've been psychologically conditioned to equate busyness with worth. If you're not constantly grinding, constantly productive, constantly seen to be doing something, you feel like you're falling behind. You feel less. The hashtag #RiseAndGrind has over 5 million posts on Instagram glorifying exhaustion. It's not just a trend, it's a mantra, a moral imperative. Rest has become shameful, laziness a sin. This isn't an accident. It's conditioning. From the moment we enter school, we're taught to follow schedules, meet deadlines, and measure our value by our output. This prepares us perfectly for a work culture that demands endless performance. If your self-worth is tied to your productivity, you'll never stop producing. You'll never truly rest. You'll always feel the need to justify your existence through your labor. And that, my friends, is a brilliant way to ensure a perpetually engaged, and perpetually exhausted, workforce. So, if the problem isn't you, but the story you've been sold, the system you've been programmed into, what then? This is where uncommon sense becomes an active choice. It's about questioning the default, looking for alternatives, and realizing that there's a different way to live, work, and thrive. Because there are already people, and entire organizations, pushing back and demonstrating that a different future is not only possible but more effective. Consider the revolutionary potential of the 4-day workweek. For decades, it was dismissed as a pipe dream, a luxury. But companies worldwide are experimenting with it, and the results are undeniable: higher productivity, increased employee well-being, reduced stress, and better retention. Microsoft Japan's 2019 trial boosted productivity by nearly 40% while making workers happier and meetings more efficient. And in Iceland, a nationwide experiment between 2015 and 2019, where shorter workweeks of 35 to 36 hours were trialed without pay cuts, was labeled an overwhelming success. Workers reported significantly less stress, less risk of burnout, and vastly improved work-life balance. Crucially, productivity either stayed the same or, in many cases, actually improved. Since its completion, a massive 86% of Iceland's workforce are now working shorter hours or have gained the right to negotiate them. This isn't just about less work, it's about smarter work and more life. Then there are alternative business models like worker cooperatives. Take Spain's Mondragon Corporation, a federation of worker-owned cooperatives. Here, employees aren't just labor. They're owners. They share in the profits, have a democratic say in decision-making, and are invested in the long-term success of the company. Mondragon is a global powerhouse, demonstrating that you can succeed, innovate, and thrive without exploiting people, without the relentless pressure, and with a deep sense of shared purpose and dignity. It's a living, breathing example of a system designed for collective well-being, not just top-down profit. And finally, perhaps the most visible pushback comes from grassroots movements like the subreddit r/anti-work. With millions of idlers, as they call themselves, this community is openly questioning whether traditional career paths, the 9 to 5, or even the very concept of being a worker, as defined by modern capitalism, make sense anymore. Despite the provocative name, they're not truly anti-work in the sense of being against contribution or effort. They're anti the status quo. They're anti-bullying bosses, anti-long hours for low pay, anti-being trapped in soul-crushing jobs. They're questioning the core assumptions we never examine. Why should your job be your identity? Why do we accept bullying as strong management? Why do we celebrate sacrificing our health, our relationships, our time for a company that would replace us in a week? They're pro-dignity. They're pro-life. They're pushing back against conventional success narratives, demanding fair treatment, autonomy, and a life that isn't solely defined by their labor. They represent a growing, collective realization that the emperor has no clothes, that the system isn't always fair, and that our worth isn't dictated by our productivity. Here's the fundamental, uncommon sense question I want you to consider as you navigate your own professional and personal life. What parts of your life, your aspirations, your sense of purpose, might not actually be your choice, but choices that have been subtly, insidiously made for you by a system that profits from your exhaustion, from your constant striving, and from your unquestioning belief in its narrative? If you've ever felt like the game is rigged, if you've ever felt that persistent, nagging sense of inadequacy despite your best efforts, you are absolutely not alone. This isn't about quitting your job tomorrow or embracing a life of idleness. It's about cultivating uncommon sense, it's about awareness. It's about recognizing the programming so you can choose to delete, modify, or rewrite it for yourself. It's about reclaiming your autonomy, your time, and your definition of success. If you're ready to question the stories we're told about success, society, and the human experience, and to start seeing the world with a little more clarity, then hit that subscribe button. Join the Uncommon Sense community. And tell me in the comments below, what's one truth about work, about success, about productivity, that you're starting to doubt? What's one piece of conventional wisdom that, with a dose of uncommon sense, just doesn't hold up anymore? Your insights are vital as we collectively deconstruct these narratives. Until next time, keep questioning, keep thinking, and keep seeking your own uncommon sense.